Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard Hot Dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Well, I can't deny that this week was interesting, I'll give it that. I mean, yes, we didn't have really much damage across the board as the chart resets from an honestly really busy past month, with debuts mostly comprising of mid to lower position debuts and a minor album bomb from Carly Rae Jepsen, where I still have yet to hear the album in full, even if I've heard really good things about it, and it's honestly a lot more promising than a lot of her previous albums have been. But what I'm saying is that we're once again in a chart cool down week, and honestly, given how busy I've been recently, I'm not really about to complain there, especially when the debuts this week are great across the board, but we'll get to that when we get to it. And even more interesting, the #1 spot is in serious danger of being swapped around, as even though I'm Good Blue by David Guetta and Bebe Rexha is still at #1, it just isn't holding much on the radio anymore, and given that streaming was never really as strong as it could have been, yeah, this is at serious risk of being knocked off, especially with it going into the recurrent list on the Hot 100. And unfortunately, the song to do it is Baby Don't Hurt Me by David Guetta, Anne-Marie and Coi Leray at #2, as even though it's losing a bit on streaming, the radio is just absolutely huge on this, and it was able to hold really damn steady on the Travis Scott album bomb week, which means that once that album bomb recedes, it's going to surge up and be a likely hit. Just wonderful. The worst version of those two songs is becoming the #1 that replaces it. Just great. And even more annoying is Rush by Troye Sivan at #3, as even though it's got really good streaming, the radio is just not picking this up, which given how they've treated his past singles, it's honestly surprising, especially with it being a smash hit around the world. Where is the momentum for this? I mean, thank God for now it's holding over Hold Me Closer by Elton John and Britney Spears at #4, where the radio is really what's keeping this goddamn track out, as even as the streaming is just completely done with it. Can't blame them. But then there's the big debut this week that we all called debuting in the top 5, Desire by Calvin Harris and Sam Smith. And look, this has the momentum in his favor given the streaming is huge, and radio is absolutely going to be on board with this given Sam Smith's a radio darling there. Hell, it was so big that it managed to actually get Billboard to change their charts midweek for it to debut this spot higher. Honestly, not really surprised there, given that it's got a lot of momentum, and it's honestly one of the best songs that's been in the top 10 this whole year, but we'll get to that when we get to it. And that midweek change managed to affect El Merengue by Marshmello and Memo Turizo, pushing it down to #6. But given that the radio is starting to rotate this out and streaming has really been giving up on it, yeah, I'm not really surprised by it, and again, I can't really complain. It's really cooled on me since I first reviewed it. Unfortunately, though, once you skip past Bizarrap Music Sessions Volume 53 by Bizarrap and Shakira at #7, which is losing hard on streaming and has no real support elsewhere, Choose Your Fighter by Ava Max is actually holding steady even if it fell down to #8, which given that the Barbie movie soundtrack has honestly had a lot of staying power, I shouldn't really be surprised there, but still, I wish it was an actually interesting song rather than this boring throwaway song from Ava Max. But unfortunately, there was the huge jump into the top 10 that we all expected for GMFU by Odatari and Barely Human at #9, and given that it's only got streaming and radio is not touching this, yeah, I expect this to fall out of the top 10 and good riddance. It's one of their better songs, but still not good. Thankfully though, It Goes Like Na 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 by Peggy Go managed to only fall 1 spot to #10, as even though radio is not really building up as fast as I expected, the streaming is really damn strong with this. I honestly expect this to gain back up in the next week or two, and I'm not really complaining. It's easily the best song in the top 10 right now. But what's not really all that surprising are our falls and fall-offs, where we had some pretty big ones across the board. I mean, we had our two biggest ones being River by Miley Cyrus and Trustful by Pink, both exiting after 20 and 26 week rules respectively and falling into the recurrent list. Not really complaining, as they honestly balance out quite well from the quality spectrum, and if they're also going to take up the other flop of a single and See You Again by the Chainsmokers, Alainium and Carly Hansen after only 5 weeks despite debuting in the top 15, yeah, I'm not really complaining. That song is hot garbage. But our falls, okay, we only had 4 to talk about, and they were all honestly quite interesting. I mean, you had your expected continued fall for Praising You by Rita Ora featuring Fatboy Slim down to 44, which is really starting to get rotated out quickly. It might have a Ghost Again style run and fall off next week, which honestly, given it's made the year-end list, I'm not really complaining there. Hell, we also had our continued falls for Volva by Tiny Ral Alejandro and Skrillex featuring Forte at 36, and Eyes Wide Shut by Illenium, Avril Lavigne and Travis Barker at 37, which given that both had a really stronger run than I expected given their viral moment was only a few weeks weeks ago, yeah, I'm not really complaining there. And finally, the big story this week, falling 26 spots out of the top 10, Mind Your Business by will.i.am and Britney Spears down to 34, which actually now holds the record for the biggest fall out of the top 10 of all time, tied with Can't Heat by Jamiroquai, which if you're seriously expecting a song that was meant to be a return for both artists to be on the same level as the 1999 classic that only got a brief spurt thanks to virality in 2014 from one video on YouTube, yeah, that's honestly really embarrassing and really telling that nobody actually likes this song, especially with the streaming being absolutely terrible for this and it likely to fall even harder in the next coming weeks. I mean, thank God the song is absolute crap and I'm honestly okay with it being a flop single, but still, this fall is really monumental and also really embarrassing for both artists involved. Good job, guys. But anyways, most of our jumps and comebacks were honestly really predictable, with the only comeback being Shy Boy by Carly Rae Jepsen at the very bottom at 50, and it has no chance of sticking around next week, thank God. But in our jumps, outside of Otatari and Barely Human in the top 10, which I already talked about, the majority are TikTok songs that got a brief moment of virality and were able to surge up as a result. I mean, we have Ascend by Desco at 43, that's promising, as well as Memory Reboot by Verge and Narvin of the debut Up Big to 30, and especially the Little Things and Gypsy Woman mashup by LB surging all the way up to 28. And the fact that this is actually sticking around, it could honestly be a surprise sleeper hit this year. Yeah, that's incredibly weird to say, but I'm honestly not complaining, it's way better than it should be. But anyways, slightly more debuts than average this time, unfortunately, starting off with number 47, Ecstasy by Suicidal Idol. Oh my god, are we seriously making this a trend now? I mean, I get that funk has a mainstream presence that's spanned for several years now, but the last thing anyone needs is that stupid emo and scene-core aesthetic of the 2000s rearing its ugly head again. I mean, Barely Human was already enough as is, but this is just getting incredibly concerning, especially with this particular producer who has one of the most alarming discographies out of any artist I've seen chart in recent memory. I mean, if you want some of the most painful examples on how that 2000s emo and scene queen aesthetic is just really not worth bringing back, it's through the discography of Suicidal Idol, because wow, a lot of his songs are absolute garbage. Thank God that this was the song that went viral from them, especially as it leans way more towards the normal drift funk sound and as such is likely to attract a much bigger audience and get more respect from me. And this was one of the most painful listens I had to get through this week. It's not even a contest there. I mean, the production had some promise with those synths that sound really pretty against a really harder hitting percussion line that leans more towards drift funk and is one of the better sounding songs out of the genre, but my god, these vocals are horrible. They're pitched to an almost annoying chipmunk level and just get really insufferable in record time, especially when they drag on the Valley Girl aesthetic from Barely Human. That becomes more insufferable the more I hear it, especially with the song only running just over 90 seconds and somehow still being one of the most tedious things I've had to listen to all year. I mean, there's just nothing really to say about this. It had some promise with the production. If you made it an instrumental, I might like it, but the vocals are so incredibly awful that they just completely ruined this whole song for me. Honestly, this kind of really sucks. Skip it. Number 46, Good Love by Hannah Lang and Roro.
Baby, the things I could do, yeah, you will learn something new. If only I could be who I am.
But on the opposite end, here's a song that I'm really happy was able to actually cross over, especially given it took a really long time to get there. I mean, this was already a top 10 hit in the UK and was leaning more towards that 90s trance throwback style and the hardcore aesthetic that Miss You lent for, and was honestly really surprising that it hasn't been bigger in the States as of now. But man, it's finally here and I am incredibly happy that the song is genuinely fantastic to boot. This is one of the best crossovers the UK has had in the United States. And this production is absolutely gorgeous, as those twinkling synths and the bassline sound absolutely fantastic against a really harder hitting hardcore beat, where there's some really nice touches on the production, especially on the drops that make it go really hard. Again, this is a club staple of the United Kingdom and I can't blame them at all. It absolutely goes off there. It absolutely goes off in that setting, especially someone who's actually experienced the song live, and it genuinely really does work well for me. I mean, I'm not really surprised the UK embraced this one as much as they did. It's got a lot of tendencies, especially in the 90s sound, that really do work well for me, and given especially that it's one of the catchiest songs that's crossed over from the UK, I'm not really surprised that the United States finally embraced it. Combine that with Roro sounding absolutely invested with her higher vocal range that matches the harder hitting production really well here and balances out quite nicely. Yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic crossover from the United Kingdom, and again, I don't expect this to have much staying power given that the United States has been very hesitant in embracing this sound, but if it manages to become a hit, I would not be complaining at all. It's a legitimately excellent song. Number 40, Kamikaze by Carly Rae Jepsen. Honestly, I'm not really all that surprised that Carly Rae Jepsen's sister album To the Loneliest Time wasn't really able to get a huge album bomb here, especially with a lot of it apparently leaning more towards dance pop and being the sort of thing where Billboard would be inconsistent at best in promoting. I mean, to be fair, she also hasn't had a huge crossover in years, and Shy Boy honestly kinda really sucked, so I wasn't really sure what to expect going out of the first of the deep cuts that charted here, and man, this is way better. I mean, part of it is the fact that it leans more on the low-key synthwave sound that really does work well against Carly Rae Jepsen's higher vocal style. It's honestly one of her most consistent sides as an artist, and I'm glad that she's exploring it here. But I also really like the hook here. Carly Rae Jepsen sounds way more comfortable, and even if the post-chorus wailing did kind of test my patience at times, everything else about this sounds really damn good, so I can't really complain about it. Especially in conveying that intense, passionate love in the lyrics, that really does work well for me, even if the titular line of needing to come kamikaze is a really awkward metaphor, given a lot of kamikaze pilots crashed into buildings and often died as a result. So yeah, not the best metaphor, and even if this song has a few problems that hold it back from being great, it's still a really solid song and has me intrigued to hear more from the album. Oh, and speaking of which, number 29, Psychedelic Switch by Carly Rae Jepsen.
Don't wake me 'cause I'm lucid dreaming, meditating on your lips. 'Cause baby, I'd be satisfied forever with a couple years of this.
A much deeper cut in the track listing, and clearly was the fan favorite of the album, and man, I'm glad that's the case because this is absolutely fantastic. Hell, this might be the most I've actually liked a Carly Rae Jepsen song since Run Away With Me, possibly even surpassing it. Yeah, I'm dead serious there. The production for one is absolutely stunning, nailing the balance between the blissed out sound alongside a really driving groove and some really hard-hitting dance percussion that really does sound fantastic. I mean, I didn't expect Carly Rae Jepsen to be singing over an S.G. Lewis or Fly Facility style of funky house production, but honestly, if this is the sign of what's to come in that sound for her, she should really do more of it. It really does fit well in the Jessie Ware sort of round, and I can honestly see myself returning to it a lot. I honestly really like the lyrics here too, where her confession of love to this guy is so passionate to the point of their intimate moment feeling like a lucid dream and a psychedelic switch, which given the production style of this song, yeah, this really does fit well for her, and her high vocals really do work well against this sort of sound as well, and it really does balance out quite nicely and creates a song that's really well composed. So yeah, legitimately excellent stuff, and I'm honestly surprised that this was the deep cut that a lot of fans embrace, given that it's not really a sound that's popular in the mainstream at the moment. But still, if this influences the sound of Carly Rae Jepsen's next album, I am all on board because this is a fantastic song. Number 25, Black Box Life Recorder 21F by Aphex Twin? I genuinely cannot believe I'm actually getting to talk about Aphex Twin on this show, considering the last time he crossed over was in 2014 with Mini Pop 67, especially with that track being the opening track of Cyro, and honestly would never have charted if it wasn't for that album dropping 13 years after Drug Use. Now, of course, I was really hyped to hear this, given that Aphex Twin's still in my top 5 artists of all time, and the selected Ambient Works albums and Drug Use in particular are 10 out of 10 albums, but even his most recent album in Cyro was honestly a lot better than many people give it credit for. It's still one of my favorite albums of 2014 and honestly of the whole 2010s decade. And this, okay, I will admit, this did take a while to fully click, mostly in that it really does sound similar to a lot of his stuff that he's been producing recently. Hell, you could have easily put this on the Collapse EP and it probably wouldn't have even sounded that different from every track on there, especially with the analog synths against the really nice breakbeat percussion. That's honestly nothing groundbreaking for Aphex Twin nowadays, and honestly does sound a bit phoned in from him. But still, even if the concept is very phoned in, the song itself is just absolutely stunning. Hell, you know what? This might be the closest closest to imitating that old Selected Ambient Works 8592 sound with his brand new breakbeat style, and it's honestly one of his best tracks in recent memory. Seriously, the sound design is absolutely immaculate. The Sims have this really sad sounding vibe that honestly makes them stand out quite well, and when the melodies do drop out, you have these really impressive breakbeat detours that honestly keep the energy of the song really going for me and sound genuinely great to boot. It's definitely not new in terms of what Aphex Twin can do, but the fact that this was able to actually cross over and break Aphex Twin's one-hit wonder status after 9 goddamn years, yeah, that's to be commended, and the song being legitimately great too, that's also a really good sign. So yeah, this is excellent, and I'm glad it was finally able to cross over even if it has no chance of sticking around. Fun stuff. Number 23, My Bad by the Chainsmokers and Shansia. Okay, I'm just gonna blast through this one fast because quite frankly the Chainsmokers don't deserve any more of my attention. I mean, they've at least had a few decent songs like Wish on an Eyelash 2 and Make Me Feel from this year, but their other stuff is absolute garbage, especially with Up and Down, Self-Destruction Mode, See You Again, Cellular being some of the worst charting songs to hit the dance charts this year. Thank God those songs flop, and I honestly expect the same for this one too, which is a little bit of a shame because it's at least one of their better songs, but still, I can't call this anywhere close to good. I mean, the only reason that it's honestly better than a lot of their other singles is just the fact that it leads more towards a house sound, which is more of a preference for me, especially with Drew Taggart actually flowing decently well over the production style, and Shansia especially having a really good presence, especially on that hook, but still, this is a complete drag to get through. I've heard no shortage of house songs that sound exactly like this, and when this has such a tedious plodding beat and some really uninteresting production styles, even if the Sims sound decent, especially on the drops that, while short, do really drag, yeah, this is just not at all interesting, and when you combine it with a really short runtime, I honestly have no real use for this. I mean, it's better than the majority of their recent singles, but that's not really a high bar at all, so yeah, still not good, skip it. And finally, number 5, Desire by Calvin Harris and Sam Smith.
You was keeping me awake. You take me higher.
I'm really goddamn happy that Calvin Harris seems to be honing in on that 90s trance throwback sound that he worked wonders on Miracle, especially with that song being an absolute smash hit around the world and really bringing that throwback style into popularity again, which is more than welcome by me. And seeing him work with Sam Smith on this sort of production style was just inspired. I mean, I love their previous collab in Promises, so I honestly had a lot of expectations for this, and yeah, this is legitimately great. Although I do want to point out that some people have some problems with this, primarily in that flute on the drops that really does sound very different from a lot of mainstream EDM. Now, some people, I would like to point out, would say that it's out of place and annoying. And okay, seriously, have you actually listened to 90s trance? A lot of the music from that era of trance was honestly really well focused and really did have this sort of production style that you would hear here, especially with flutes being much more prominent in a lot of 90s trance songs than you remember, especially with a lot of them being deep cuts that don't get mainstream attention. And even if they for some reason weren't a common thing in this sort of trance throwback sounds, it's not like Calvin Harris's melodies are anything bad for them. I mean, they really do sound nice and balance out against the lower bass frequencies really damn well, especially on the drops where they just really float across the whole mix and sound great. And more importantly, the rest of the song is absolutely gorgeous to boot and really does sound perfect. The melodies are instant ear candy, where I get why this blew up on TikTok as fast as it did. Sam Smith just sounds absolutely terrific and really does show that their vocal style really does work well for this brand of electronic music. And the song is produced so well that it progresses at a really natural rate and really does sound organic as all hell, which is really rare for a lot of 90s trance throwbacks nowadays. I mean, seriously, just listen to this back to back with Vulgar if we're talking Sam Smith electronic songs, because really this is the sort of song that fits wonders for their voice, and I honestly wish that Sam Smith would embrace this style more instead of the boring pop stuff that they usually do. So yeah, absolutely excellent, and if this is able to be the big Hot 100 crossover in the United States that Miracle unfortunately wasn't, I would not be complaining at all because it's over on a similar tier of quality, which is really saying something given how much I adore Miracle. And yeah, after last week, the difference in quality this week is wild. Honestly, to the point where I'm gonna give out 2 best of the weeks to Desire by Calvin Harris and Sam Smith, tied with Good Love by Hannah Lang and Roro. And yeah, those are both great UK crossovers. I'm glad they're here. Hell, we're gonna get another UK artist getting the honorable runner-up in Aphex Twin with Black Box Life Recorder 21F. Although Carly Rae Jepsen's Psychedelic Switch was really close. It was a really high bar this week. Hell, even if the worst is going to Ecstasy by Suicidal Idol with dishonorable runner-up to My Bad by the Chainsmokers featuring Shansia. Again, these are both some of the better songs of both artists that I've heard, and honestly, I don't expect either to have much in the way of staying power, so there's that to look forward to as well. Next week, I honestly don't really know what to expect outside of yet another Big Rexha and David Guetta collab. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, obviously. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.